If your hip pops when you do leg raises, well, I'm gonna show you how to fix it in 3 easy steps. We recently hosted a live movement session that was focused on the core. And during this movement session, I focused on teaching people the 3 steps to reduce that hip popping or completely eliminate it when doing things like leg raises or sit-ups. And I was blown away by the responses. In fact, check this one out. So if you've been struggling with this for a long time, then today you're gonna learn those same 3 steps. But first, let me tell you why this often happens inside your hip or in your lower back when you're doing things like leg raises or sit-ups. You see, when we wanna strengthen our core, the goal is to use all these muscles to stabilize the trunk and even to move the legs up and down when we're doing things like crunches, sit-ups, or leg raises. But when we've had that hip clicking happen, there's a few things happening. One, we're overemphasizing the use of our hip flexors, the muscles that lift our leg up like this. This de-emphasizes the core and focuses on those muscles instead, which often can create compression inside the hip capsule, causing that hip click to happen. Also, we're not using our glutes and our core in synergy together. And when we use the glute muscles, not the ones on the back, but the ones on the side that twist the legs outward, well, then we create more space inside the hip to be able to do these moves without the hip clicking. So what I'm gonna do today is teach you these 3 steps. Just apply these 3 steps to your leg raises and watch that hip pop go away. Oh, and make sure to let us know in the comments if it worked for you. Step number 1 is to focus on loosening those tight hip flexors. And this is really important because when we have tight hip flexors, our pelvis tips forward like this. And when our pelvis tips forward like this, we try to do things like leg raises. Well, again, we're emphasizing those muscles that lift the leg rather than the muscles that stabilize the core. So the first step is to stretch your hip flexors. And here's 3 ways to do it. Pick the way that feels the most comfortable for you and stretch your hip flexors for 60 to 90 seconds per side before doing leg raises, and that will help. Okay? So to start, you can do it this variation. This is a beginner variation where you take 1 step forward, 1 step back, turn your hips forward like this, and the key to stretching your hip flexors is making sure that as you come forward, you don't arch your lower back like this. Otherwise, we're just overarching the lower back. So instead, squeeze your glute muscles and tip your pelvis and point your tailbone towards the ground. Immediately, you should feel a stretch coming through your hip flexors right here. Now in this position, we can imagine bringing our pelvis forward towards our front heel as we descend into the stretch to deepen through the hip flexor muscles. And if you want to deepen it even more, you can even lift your arm overhead and lean a little bit to the side, and you'll start to feel the stretch coming deeper into the abdomen. Again, hold this for 60 to 90 seconds per side to stretch your hip flexor. If this doesn't feel like a good fit for you, or you don't feel that stretch, here's 2 more ways to do it. One way is bringing your knee onto a chair like this, taking a step forward, and then stretching your hip flexor this way. So it feels almost identical, but you can get a much deeper stretch when your knee is elevated on a chair surface like this. Just make sure to squeeze your glutes and tuck your pelvis. Don't let the tailbone stick out. Otherwise, you'll be stretching the lower back rather than stretching the hip flexors. And finally, if that still doesn't feel like the best fit for you, you can come down to the ground. Just make sure you have a nice soft cushion to put underneath your knee. Turn your hips forward and come down and forward into that same hip flexor stretch just like this. Again, hold one of these stretches for 60 to 90 seconds each side before doing leg raises to help out with that hip pop. But next up, let's talk about arching your lower back and activating your core. Okay, now that you've loosened up your hip flexors, let's focus on stabilizing the core while you move your legs up and down. This is a critical step in making sure that you're focusing on your ab muscles rather than using your hip flexor muscles. So how do you know that you're doing this right? Well, the number 1 sign is, can you keep your lower back pushed into the ground? And I'm emphasizing the word pushed because even if you just maintain contact with the ground, but it's real loose contact, it's probably not enough to maintain proper position. So before we do a leg raise, the first thing we want to do is this: press the lower back down into the ground. You can do this by tilting your pelvis this direction and pointing your tailbone slightly up and lifting your chest off the ground like this. And if for any reason this causes your neck any discomfort, all you have to do is grab a pillow, put it behind your head, and rest your head while you continue to push that lower back into the ground. Now, from there, lift both legs and maintain this position. Now, as you start to go down, try to imagine that you're trying to balance on the middle of your lower back as you bring the legs down. That's immediately going to make this movement a lot harder. So you might have to bend your knees more because straightening your legs makes it harder and bending your knees makes this movement a whole lot easier. But practice this movement with bent knees, slow and controlled, really trying to feel that lower back push into the ground, which again is going to activate your core and de-emphasize your hip flexors. If this angle of your knee feels good, then you can slowly start to straighten your knees, slow and controlled until you start to feel that lower back start to want to lift off the ground. The moment that lower back wants to lift off the ground, that's as far as you can go while maintaining your current level of core strength and having good posture so that your hip doesn't click. So pause there. But there's one more reason why your hip might be clicking, and let's address that one next. The third step is to learn how to twist your thighs outward like this. This is important because if I have my legs up like this and I internally rotate, or I twist my knees inward like this, well, guess what? This internal rotation, this inward twisting, is gonna push me into my lower back lifting off the ground, again, emphasizing hip flexors instead of the core. But if I push my feet together like this, and I open my knees like this, all of a sudden, my lower back wants to get pushed into the ground. So as you're doing your leg raises, at first, open up your hips and push your feet together. So you're pushing outward here and inward there. Press the lower back down into the ground, and then take a big breath in, come down, tap the heels, and come back up. And watch as the hip hop goes away. If your hip hop went away just now, that's because you learned to move your body better. And when you move your body better, you feel better in your body. And that's exactly what we teach you how to do at WeShape. We give you workouts that are not intimidating, that are gentle on the joints, and that are for complete beginners all the way through intermediate and advanced. Our workouts use movements that are scaled just for you to make sure you have the perfect workout with the perfect moves to help you gain strength, flexibility, balance, and coordination, all while learning how to move your body safely. Plus, you can try it out for free. All you gotta do is click the link below if you wanna give that a shot. Otherwise, if you wanna learn some more beginner core moves to help you strengthen your core safely, watch this video right here.